Yeah, so I think this is a really important topic you brought up because I often joke like the perfect example is, if you drive an EV in Santa Monica, you get to park for free at the meters and it's like 250 per 15 or 20 minutes. And I'm always joking to myself like, do you really need people that can afford to live in Santa Monica, do we really need to be subsidizing their meters? And so I think that like I'm never in love with that idea, and it's sort of a little bit of a chicken egg, right? If cities have to spend a lot of money to put chargers in areas where, they're not going to be used that much, they probably look at the pilot after 3 or 6 months and say, wow, this was really expensive to put in. No one really used it. And the folks living in that area, like they're not going to go out and buy an EV instantly because of that charging. I think the barrier on the sort of upfront costs, it might be a bit higher. And this, I think, ties in really well to the audience that I know well, with Uber and Lyft drivers, because I always tell people, most of the rides, most of the demand happens in higher socioeconomic areas, as you might imagine, right? Like the busier, the dense, where people are going and ordering food. But drivers, making 15, 20, $30 an hour can't afford to live in those areas, right? So they often live much farther away. Like in LA, they live out in the valley north, or they live out east where it's much cheaper, or down south, right? So I'm kind of curious, like when you start thinking about, like Uber and Lyft drivers, for example, and like kind of their charging needs, how do they fit into the equation here? I'm sure they're a cohort that I know you're looking at.
Yeah, we're very interested in finding solutions for rideshare and for fleet charging.
Mhm.
Um, Same exact reason that you described for LA, same thing here in New York. A lot of these Uber drivers are doing their shifts in Manhattan, and then they actually live out in Ridgewood, Queens. They live out
Mhm.
in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. They live in these areas that are not as affluent as the areas that they serve, where they do most of their rounds in Manhattan. So for us right now, the options for them, and especially, when you have companies that are rideshare companies that are looking to push their quote unquote fleets to electric by, I believe, 2030,
Yeah.
2035. You have to find ways for them to be able to charge. So I'd be curious to hear from you sort of what are the average miles that a rideshare driver puts on in
Yeah.
cities like LA versus New York? Because there's going to be the need to sort of, charge during the day, but also these are drivers these are their cars. They take them home at night.
Yeah.
So they should be able to do that overnight charge, get that battery back up to 100%.
Yeah.
And they can't do that in cities. So we're really excited to find ways to partner with rideshare drivers so that we can install our chargers in front of their building, again, at no cost. They can park there at night, they can charge, and then they're also earning revenue from people that may park there during the day while they're on their rounds, on their
Yeah.
shifts.
Well, I think one of the reasons why electrification has been such a big interest of mine on both the personal and business side is because, well, maybe you don't know, but a lot of people don't know that, a full-time Uber and Lyft driver will easily do 1,000 miles a week on their car, maybe even up to 1,500, especially if they live in an area like LA. They might live 30, 40, 50 miles outside the city. So they're commuting 40 to 50 miles in and out each day. That's 100 miles right there, plus their daily driving, which might be, another 100 to 200 miles, depending on the trips they get and where they go. And so, that kind of break even point, right, between the upfront cost of an EV versus ICE is a lot quicker. There's still, I think the biggest barriers for Uber and Lyft drivers into getting into EVs are sort of one, that upfront cost, and then two, access to charging. So I feel like, you're solving one of those problems, it sounds like, but those are kind of the two main issues for Uber and Lyft drivers.